Beneath the endless ice of Antarctica something ancient waits. For centuries explorers vanished here, their voices lost, their journals silenced, but their whispers remain. They spoke of lights in the storm skies, of walls that moved, of voices inside their skulls. The governments buried it, the scientists denied it, but the archives never forgot. And now the ice is breaking, the truth is rising, and what comes out will not be stopped. I never wanted to write these words, but silence has become heavier than the truth, and the nights colder than the wind of the south. When they sent us to Antarctica, they said we were part of a scientific survey to measure ice depth and climate shifts, but I knew from the first sealed envelope that this was not about science, this was about secrets. We left the port on a steel vessel that carried no name on its side, only numbers painted in black like a soldier's badge. The ocean stretched endless and gray, the waves rose and fell like breathing, and the further we moved from land, the more I felt the air thicken, as if the earth itself did not want us to approach the pole. Men on board spoke little, they kept their eyes down, they smoked in silence, and when the officers walked by they straightened like wood. We had crates locked with iron, we had instruments wrapped in oilcloth, we had rifles, though no one spoke of hunting in a land of ice. One night the captain called me to his cabin. He placed a folder on the table, yellowed and marked with stains. He said nothing, just tapped his finger on the cover and left me alone. I opened it and saw photographs, blurred and faded but unmistakable. One showed a wall of stone half buried in snow, carved with lines that bent like rivers and symbols I had never seen. Another showed a black entrance wide as a cathedral with shadows that seemed to lean outward, not inward, as if whatever was inside was pushing to escape. The folder closed itself in my trembling hands. I tried to forget it, but each night the same images returned behind my eyelids. When we reached the edge of the ice, the sea froze around us like a cage. The sound of breaking waves turned to silence, only the groaning of the hull remained. We stepped on white ground that stretched in every direction like a dead world, no bird, no beast, only cold that bit through skin into bone. The officers guided us inland, pulling sleds heavy with equipment. The wind cut our faces raw, but we kept moving day after day until we reached a ridge where the ice cracked open. There in the valley below, the snow had melted in perfect circles, as if heat had risen from beneath, not from above. We descended, ropes scraping on ice and boots slipping on frozen stone. At the base stood the first structure, a wall not made by man, its surface black and smooth like glass, yet covered with frost that refused to melt in the sun. I placed my hand against it and felt vibration, faint but real, as though a heart beat behind stone. Others touched it too, some pulled back with fear, some whispered prayers. None of us spoke loudly. The captain ordered us to set camp around the site. We pitched tents, we lit fires, but the smoke curled wrong. It sank to the ground instead of rising, as if the air itself was heavier here. At night I could not sleep. I heard sounds under the ice, not the groaning of glaciers, but rhythm steady like steps moving beneath us. One of the men woke screaming. He said he saw lights moving under the ground like veins glowing blue. Then he shivered and would not open his eyes again. The next morning we began digging at the base of the wall, picks striking ice until sparks flew. The more we dug, the warmer the air felt, though the sky above remained frozen gray. After hours our tools struck something hollow, metal that rang like a bell, but no sound echoed, only silence followed. We cleared more and saw the outline of a door, tall and narrow, etched with lines that spiraled inward, the same symbols from the photographs carved deep into the surface. The captain stood in front, his face pale, his hands clenched. He did not speak. Finally he gave the order. We were to open it no matter what waited beyond. We fastened charges to the edge, small enough not to destroy but strong enough to break the seal. When the blast came it echoed without sound. The air trembled, but no smoke, no flame, only a crack spreading like a wound across the black surface. The door shifted inward, releasing a breath of air that smelled not of earth, not of stone, but of something ancient, metallic and sharp. I stepped forward, lantern in hand, my heart beating louder than the wind outside. The darkness inside swallowed the light, and yet I felt eyes staring from within, waiting, patient and cold. We had found what was hidden, and it had found us. The air inside the doorway was thick and heavy. It pressed against our lungs, as if it wanted us to turn back, but the captain ordered us forward, and so we obeyed. We carried lanterns that flickered weak against the vast dark walls, smooth and curved as though carved by hands larger than ours, each line bending into spirals that disappeared into shadows. The ground was not ice nor stone, it was something between both, solid yet damp. It made no sound under our boots, as if it absorbed every step. We walked deeper, leaving behind the pale light of the surface, until nothing remained but the glow of our own fire and the sound of our breathing. I could feel the weight of the place pressing down on my shoulders like invisible hands guiding us inward, pulling us farther from the world above. One of the men dropped his pack. The sound was swallowed instantly. No echo, no ring, only silence so pure it made my teeth ache. We came to a chamber vast beyond the reach of our lights, the roof lost in shadow, the walls lined with shapes that seemed to move when not watched. The captain ordered us to spread out to map the space, but the further we moved apart, the stronger the sense grew that we were not alone. I kept my lantern close to the wall, tracing the carvings with my hand. They were not written words, they were patterns flowing like rivers, weaving together into circles that pulsed faintly with blue light. My skin tingled where I touched them, my thoughts felt clouded, as though whispers crawled at the edges of my mind, voices too low to understand yet strong enough to stir fear. At the center of the chamber stood a structure shaped like an altar or perhaps a table. It was black and smooth but warm to the touch, as if fire lived beneath its surface. On it rested objects small and fragile, bone thin but not bone, glass clear but not glass, cylinders that hummed softly when lifted. One of the officers picked one up and held it against his ear, his face drained pale. He dropped it screaming, but no sound left his mouth. He only opened and closed his lips like a drowning man, then collapsed trembling. We pulled him back. He breathed again, but his eyes were wide, as if he had seen something none of us could see. The captain stared at the cylinder, then ordered it packed in a crate marked with the red symbol of secrecy we had seen on the ship. I wanted to leave, but the way behind already felt distant, as if the entrance had sealed itself in our memory. I could not even picture the snow outside, only the black walls surrounding us. We moved to another passage, narrow and steep steps carved into stone, descending into colder air. Though no frost formed, only a thin mist that glowed faintly in our lanterns. The descent felt endless. The sound of boots faded, the rhythm of breathing grew ragged. Some men whispered prayers again, though their voices broke with fear. At last the passage opened into another hall, this one filled with columns tall and twisted like frozen trees, yet made of metal, shining faint in the glow. Between the columns stood statues, or perhaps bodies, tall thin figures with elongated heads, their arms hanging longer than any human frame. They stood in silence, yet every part of me felt they were not statues but watchers frozen in time. I dared not touch them, but one man did. He brushed his hand against the surface, and the figure shuddered faintly, as though it had taken a breath. He screamed and pulled back, his glove blackened where he had touched. We gathered close together, no one daring to move forward, the lanterns flickering as though air itself grew thin. The captain whispered, "This is what we came for," but even he did not sound certain. His voice shook like a man standing before judgment. We continued deeper and deeper until another chamber revealed itself, circular and vast, walls carved with maps not of Earth as we know it but of stars, constellations twisted and paths drawn between them. I recognized none of them, yet they burned with precision as if charting voyages across galaxies we had never imagined. In the center of the room stood a pillar taller than a man, glowing, faint blue pulses running up and down its surface like veins of light. We approached it cautiously, the captain reaching out his hand, but before he could touch it the pulse grew brighter, flooding the room with light so strong our lanterns died instantly. In that glow I saw shapes, not with eyes but with the mind, shadows that moved around us, reaching out, touching us without hands. I fell to my knees, trembling, my chest heavy, my head filled with voices, all speaking at once, words I could not understand but meaning I could feel, like fire pressing into thought. They were not welcoming us, they were measuring us, weighing us, deciding if we belonged here. The light faded and the voices ceased, the room dark once more, only our lanterns returning weak and pale. The captain stood silent, his hand still inches from the pillar, his eyes wide and hollow like a man who had given something away and could not take it back. We turned then without a word, each of us knowing we had stepped into something far older and far greater than man. But the way back was no longer the same, and I feared we would never see the sky again. The passage narrowed behind us until it felt like the walls themselves wanted to crush our lungs, each step forward more painful than the last, yet no one dared to turn back. The captain carried the crate with the humming cylinder, his arms trembling under the weight. Though it was small and light, it seemed to grow heavier with every moment, as if it fed on him. The silence was not empty, it pressed against our ears like a tide pushing from all directions, every breath loud inside our skulls, every heartbeat echoing inside our chests. We came to another chamber, and this one was different, it was alive. The walls pulsed faintly with light, veins of blue and green running like rivers beneath a thin skin of stone, each pulse matching the rhythm of my own heart until I could no longer tell if it was mine or the chamber's. A sound rose faint at first, then stronger, not from the air but from inside our skulls, a chorus of whispers blending into one voice too large to belong to flesh, too ancient to belong to time. We froze, the lantern's flickering shadows bending into shapes that were not ours, long arms, long faces staring back with hollow eyes before melting into the walls again. The captain whispered, "Hold steady," but his voice shook like a boy, not like a soldier, and his hand that gripped the crate shook as well. At the far end of the chamber stood a doorway carved not by human hand. It was a perfect circle, blacker than night, no reflection, no depth, just absence. As we drew closer, the whispers grew louder until they became screams, though no air moved and no sound touched our ears, only thought burning inside our skulls. One of the men dropped his pack, clutching his head, his mouth wide in silent terror. He fell to the ground, thrashing like he fought invisible chains until blood poured from his nose. He lay still, his eyes open, staring into nothing. We dragged him away, but he was gone. The captain ordered us onward, though every step forward was against the will of our own bodies, as if the air itself commanded us to stop, yet the circle pulled us like gravity. We crossed into it and the world changed. There was no floor, no ceiling, no walls, only endless dark pierced by streams of light, drifting like rivers in the void. They twisted and bent, forming shapes of stars, galaxies, entire worlds passing like clouds before the eye. We were no longer in Antarctica, we were inside something else. I floated, though my boots still touched nothing. Every man around me drifted, as if weight had abandoned us, yet our lungs still burned with air, our hearts still pounded, though louder, now far louder. The crate in the captain's arms shook violently, the cylinder inside glowing through the wood, until the box burst open and the thing rose on its own, spinning faster, humming so loud it rattled our bones. In its glow I saw things no man should see, shapes beyond reason, towers of black stone reaching into skies with two suns, seas of liquid silver boiling without fire, cities built by hands too large for man, and in those cities tall figures watched us, their heads bent, their long arms reaching. I screamed, but no sound left my throat, only the thought carried away like smoke into the void. The captain tried to grab the cylinder, but it lifted higher and higher until it was above us like a second sun, glowing brighter until it cracked. The light exploded and the world bent around us. We fell. When I opened my eyes, we were lying on the floor of a chamber, not the void, not the snow above, but somewhere deeper, the walls covered in symbols burning red, not blue, the air heavy with heat as though fire lived in the stone. Half the men were gone. I do not know if they died or if they were taken, only that their gear remained, their lanterns still burning but their bodies absent as if erased. The captain still lived, his eyes hollow, his lips whispering words that did not belong to any tongue I knew. He clutched the shattered remains of the cylinder, blood dripping from his hands as though the thing had cut him from inside. We gathered what courage we had left and moved again deeper, for the path back had vanished, replaced by walls that shifted when unobserved, each glance finding them in new places as though the structure itself was alive and changing. The deeper we went, the hotter the air grew until sweat soaked our uniforms, yet no flame burned, only a red glow from the veins in the stone. Then we came to another hall, this one filled with cages, black metal curved like ribs, each cage large enough to hold a man, and some of them were not empty. Figures crouched within, tall, thin, with skin stretched tight over bones, their heads too long, their arms too thin, their eyes closed, yet I knew they were not dead. I felt their thoughts like faint sparks in the air, reaching, whispering. One of the men touched the bars and screamed, his hand black and shriveled. Before he pulled it back, he fell, shaking his body, convulsing until smoke rose from his skin. Then he was still, his eyes burned, empty sockets staring. The captain did not move, he only whispered louder, his words now echoing faintly through the hall, as if answered by the creatures in the cages. I wanted to turn and run, but the path was gone, the stone closing behind us, the only way forward, the only way deeper. The voices grew louder, the air hotter, the shadows longer. I knew then we had crossed into something that was not meant for man. And I feared we had not been the first. The cages surrounded us like ribs of a dead beast, each one glowing faintly with veins of red, as if the stone itself breathed in silence. The air grew heavier until every breath felt stolen from something that did not want us here. The figures inside the cages stirred, faint movements of fingers, twitching eyelids, fluttering though their eyes never opened. Their thoughts poured into us like smoke, filling the lungs, invisible yet choking. I felt words forming inside my skull, not my own words, voices too ancient and cold to belong to man. The captain whispered again, his voice now blending with theirs, a chorus of tongues we did not know yet somehow understood. He spoke of awakening, of release of fire under ice. The ground trembled faintly as though the mountain itself shifted around us, dust falling from the ceiling, the glow in the stone pulsing faster like a beating heart rising toward frenzy. One of the men broke and ran. He bolted down the hall screaming, his mind shattering from the whispers. We watched his lantern vanish into the dark. Then a sound like tearing cloth echoed and silence returned. He did not come back. We dragged ourselves forward because there was no turning back. The walls closed each time we glanced behind like a throat sealing itself. At the far end of the chamber stood a pedestal, black stone slick like oil. Upon it rested a sphere no larger than a human skull, glowing faintly blue within shifting shapes like stars trapped inside a prison of glass. The captain dropped to his knees before it, his hands bleeding. As he reached toward the glow, the voices surged louder, filling us with visions not our own. I saw oceans boiling with silver storms vast as continents, machines rising from beneath the waves carrying towers upon their backs. I saw skies split by rivers of fire where black ships moved in silence, blocking suns and moons. I saw men kneeling, offering weapons, offering knowledge, offering children. The sphere pulsed and the captain placed his hand upon it. The glow surged, blue light spilling across the chamber, shadows scattering like ash, and the cages unlocked. Metal bent silently, and the figures within stepped out, tall, thin, their eyes opening, glowing like suns within skulls too long for human form. Their mouths did not move, yet their thoughts screamed into us. You broke the seal, you carried the key, you are ours. One soldier raised his rifle in panic. He fired, the sound deafening in the enclosed hall, bullets ripping through the thin bodies, yet no blood spilled. The figures did not fall, instead they moved through the bullets like mist, their forms bending, their arms reaching. The man screamed as one touched him, his body stiffened, his skin turning pale until it cracked like porcelain. Then he shattered into dust that scattered across the floor, leaving nothing but boots and an empty rifle. The rest of us fell back, but there was no path, only walls closing the chamber, shrinking, forcing us toward the sphere and toward them. The captain stood still, his face calm, his eyes hollow, his hands glowing blue where they touched the sphere. He whispered, not in words, but in thought. He said, they have waited, they have guided, they have ruled since before man could crawl. He said, we belong to them, we always belong to them. I grabbed him, tried to pull him away, but the light burned my flesh. I screamed as my skin blackened, smoke rising from my hand. I staggered back, the smell of my own burning flesh filling my lungs. The creatures surrounded us, not walking but gliding, their limbs bending too far, their shadows stretching longer than their bodies, each step closer, pressing our minds with weight unbearable. I felt my thoughts, not my own memories, shifting, as if rewritten, my childhood, my mother, my first steps, all turning into visions of ice and fire, not mine, not human. Another soldier fell, clawing at his skull until his head burst, blood spraying across the stone before evaporating into the air, as if consumed by the chamber itself. The rest of us stumbled toward the walls, hoping for a crack, a tunnel, a chance, but the stone shifted, closed, until there was only one way forward, toward the pedestal. The captain lifted the sphere into his hands and raised it high. The glow pulsed through him, veins of light crawling across his body, until he was no longer flesh but a figure of blue fire. His mouth opened in silent scream, his body collapsing into ash, yet the sphere remained floating above the pedestal, brighter now than before. The creatures bent low in reverence, their glowing eyes fixed upon it, and upon us, as though we had delivered their god. A sound shook the chamber, not from stone, not from air, but from within our bones, a rumble of awakening, something vast beneath us, moving the floor, trembling like a beast rising from endless sleep. The creatures turned their gaze upward, their eyes blazing brighter. The whispers filled us again, only one phrase repeated over and over, not in sound but in thought. The ice is breaking, the ice is breaking, the ice is breaking. The mountain roared, the walls shook, lanterns shattered, plunging us into the red glow and blue fire, the chamber alive with soundless screams. I fell to my knees, clutching my head as blood poured from my ears. The others collapsed around me one by one. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was the sphere rising higher and higher, the creatures following it, their forms stretching upward until they vanished into the stone itself, leaving only the echo of their words burning in my skull. The ice is breaking. When I woke, the chamber was gone. I lay on stone that pulsed with heat, the red glow brighter than ever, the air so heavy I could not breathe without feeling fire in my lungs. Around me lay the broken bodies of men who had marched with me into the dark, their faces twisted in terror, their flesh cracked like clay, some turned entirely to ash, their dog tags the only sign they had ever lived. The captain was gone, only the sphere remained floating above the ground, glowing blue brighter with every pulse, the veins of the mountain feeding into it like rivers pouring into an endless sea. I rose though my body shook and my vision swam, my hand blackened from the burn still throbbed, but I felt no pain, only emptiness, as though part of me had already been taken. Then the ground split with a sound like thunder, the stone beneath me cracked, and from the depths below a roar surged, not air, not voice, but something larger than both, the very earth screaming in agony or triumph. The chamber collapsed around me, walls folding upward into shapes too vast for my eyes to follow, towers of stone rising like ribs of a beast waking after endless sleep, the mountain itself alive. From the fissures rose light beams of silver shooting upward through rock and ice as though the world above were glass. I saw the ceiling vanish, the black sky of Antarctica split open, stars spinning as if drawn closer. The sphere grew brighter until it shattered into streams of light that poured into the fissures, into the rising towers, into the veins of the stone. The mountain drank it, the world drank it. And the creatures returned. They stepped out from the cracks, not the thin, withered forms we had seen in cages, but taller, stronger, their eyes blazing suns, their bodies formed of shadow and fire. They moved without sound, their thoughts striking like hammers upon my skull. They filled me with visions of the world, not ours. I saw the pyramids rising not from human hands, but from theirs. I saw fires in the sky over Rome. I saw black ships above the deserts of Arabia. I saw kings kneeling before them, signing pacts in blood. I saw men crowned not by choice of people, but by whispers of these rulers who needed no throne. They showed me cities not yet built, towers of steel bending under skies without sun. They showed me oceans boiling, forests burning. They showed me children with eyes like theirs walking upon streets of ash. I screamed, but no sound left my throat, my voice stolen by the weight of what they placed inside me. The creatures encircled me, their arms rising, their voices not heard but felt inside my marrow. They spoke not in words, but in certainty. You are witness, you will carry us to them, you will open the way. I begged in silence, but they did not hear or did not care. They placed their hands upon my head and my chest, and I felt fire pour into me, my veins alight, my vision filled with stars collapsing into black holes, galaxies folding into nothing until all that remained was ice and fire and their gaze. When they released me, I fell, and the chamber was gone. I was lying in snow, the storm raging above Antarctica, the night sky torn with lights that moved not like stars but like eyes watching. Around me the ice was broken for miles, the mountains split open, light pouring into the sky like a beacon calling across the void. No bodies remained, no captain, no soldiers, no cages, only me and the snow and the endless hum inside my skull. I stumbled across the ice until rescue found me, though I do not remember how or when. They dragged me into a tent, voices shouting around me, doctors' hands pressing against me, but I heard nothing, only the hum, only the whispers telling me to wait, telling me they were not finished. I wrote this not to seek forgiveness nor to seek belief, for I know no one will believe me. I write this because the archives must grow, and because what I saw is not a secret, it is a pattern, and patterns always return. The lights in the sky will come again, the ice will break again, the voices will call again. And when they do, you will remember this. You will remember that humanity was never the center of its own story. You will remember that rulers need no throne, no crown, no army. Control is given, not taken. And you have already given it.